right, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this session. It's going to be an engaging one. And we've got some really brilliant folks joining us. We've got a range of backgrounds, so it'll be a very productive discussion. Welcome to How AI is Reshaping Learning and Work, Equipping All for Success. This webinar is being hosted in partnership between Our Media and GlobalMindED. I just wanted to share a few sentences about background and some context around this webinar, and then I thought we could dive right into introductions from our panelists and then questions. So just to set the stage a little bit, this webinar is actually building on a panel discussion that happened in person a little over a month ago at GlobalMindED's annual conference in Denver. So GlobalMindED is a national nonprofit that's focusing on trying to encourage and empower first-gen students for success in career. So this was one of the topics they had covered. And now Our Media, are kind of hosting the second session. It was a really robust discussion back in June, and both audience and panelists expressed a lot of interest in continuing the discussion. So I'm excited to be able to do that today. Um, just to quickly share a little bit about myself. So my name is Tara. I'll be moderating today's session. I am the Associate Director of Our Media. We are a national nonprofit working to surface the ideas, needs, and interests of Generation Z to help shape how educators, employers, and communities support an AI-ready workforce. So the topic of conversation today is one that's been really high priority in our discussions. So I'm excited to be able to moderate today's session, and I'm just sharing Our Media's LinkedIn just in case folks are interested in um, following us and just staying up to date, because we do often host webinars and in-person sessions like this. So just to dive right in, though, I was thinking we could get straight into panel introductions. So Solomon, do you think you might be able to start us off?
Yeah, so my name is Solomon. Been spent over like a decade or so in education, AI, startups, tech sector. Happy to be here. Representing, coming from a consulting startup background of what I'm running, where I've been spending a lot of time building AI solutions to help with learning and workforce development. And I'm calling out of Baltimore, Maryland today.
Oh, Tara, I think you're muted right now.
Sorry. Jorge, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Jorge Costa. I've been in the music industry for over 20 years, and I expanded into education about 10 years ago. And I would say about 5 years ago, I started exploring AI first out of fear. And now it's turned into something I'm very passionate about. Last year, I created and taught the first class on AI and music production at a college level. And I've been teaching at ASU. I'm an assistant professor there. I've been there for 4 years. And now I'm very interested in where this intersection between education, AI, and the creative arts is leading. So I'm very excited to share some experiences and hear from you all.
Thanks. Zach?
Yeah, really excited to be here. My main role is at DSST Public Schools. I've been a teacher for about 15 years and recently transitioned to working in STEM, AI, and partnerships. And a lot of the work that we've done with AI and I've done with AI started with deep curiosity. So really early on, built a prompting framework called the RCP method, which has proven surprisingly durable, built some of the really incredible bots that we've used in education. So this includes VoteWise Colorado, a voter engagement and voter empowerment app that we used in the 2024 election, built by students. Additionally, really have worked as a translator to help educators and students understand how they can become more powerful, leveraging AI to help to collaborate with each other and create things that they want to see in the world. And what is most exciting about this is we're really starting to get some powerful data around when we leverage AI well, how that can increase student output, student fulfillment, and of course, student achievement. So excited to share some of that today.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. Kenya?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Kenya, based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, out of Carnegie Mellon as a consultant, principal consultant there. And my journey in this space of um, digital transformation has been pretty much my whole career. And that's what led me to continue going to school because I wanted to make sure that adult learners were not being left behind when new technology was being brought into the organization. And we can't run away from AI. It's here. I'm fortunate to be working in both worlds, right? I teach an executive course, and at the same time, I'm also a consultant for the university's capital strategic projects, making sure we are innovating in every direction we're going. And one of the things I want to share with the non-technical people is find your niche, find what you're interested in doing or what you're interested in doing, and figure out how to innovate in that space, how to use technology in that space, how to use AI in that space, and understanding that there's a major supply chain or ecosystem that is involved with AI. So it's not just for the tech people, and that's something I'm really trying to advocate. There's room for non-tech people in this so-called growth and transformational phase of AI. Right, and back to you, Tara.
Thank you. Last but not least, Dave.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dave Toole. I run an emerging AI venture studio and spent my first chapter of my career helping to build a couple hundred semiconductor factories. And the second chapter of my career helping Intel define a 20-year computing roadmap, building some of the first cloud platforms, and now running an emerging AI venture studio, which our media is part of. And we have a number of other ventures around communications and learning. And another one called Humanizing AI, which is a think tank to help answer some of what Kenya brought up, is how do we help people understand there's a lot more beyond the technical side of AI that we believe will be impacting our lives. So a lot of passion, interest, and hopefully some thoughts that can be of value to those at the table here. Thank you.
Yeah. That's great. I think one thing I'm just reflecting on with this panel is each of you as individuals, I think, have expertise that ranges both into the learning environment as well as business and innovation. And so I think, yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see those forces at play in this discussion. When I'm thinking about the topic, so how AI is reshaping learning and work, equipping all for success, those feel like two big distinct questions. So I wanted to start by looking at that first one a little bit. We're seeing some really massive disruptions caused by AI across all of these different spaces. Just to start, could each of you share a little bit about, what are one or two big signals or impacts you guys are seeing and how AI might be reshaping or disrupting the learning or work environment?
I'll start. I'll start with an answer to that. I think that we're seeing a dislocation occurring that we're recognizing AI is moving so fast that it's hard to interpret the things we might do about it. But new college graduates can't find jobs. The workforce development folks are trying to figure out how to get more done with less people. And so we're not putting attention to those things that help us explore these tools that give us new ways of leveraging this capability and redefining what the work-life balance might look like going forward. So I think that's sort of a meta position around this, and there's plenty of statistics to support that.
I'm happy to follow up, and I'm going to focus on the education side of things. What I've experienced in the past year bringing AI into the classroom has been very interesting because as you know, as an educator, you're trained to be the one that knows, right? You're meant to be the one that knows everything and imparts your wisdom to these young people. AI kind of changes that dynamic very drastically because we are discovering AI at the same time as our students are doing so. And I don't know who can be an AI expert except somebody who's, maybe designing the algorithm. So, as an example, when I started teaching the AI in music production class, the first thing I had to discuss with my students were two things. First, what were their fears and my fears around AI? And there's plenty of it. Uh, Followed by recognizing that even though I'm an expert in production, in sound engineering, I'm really not an expert in AI. And I think acknowledging that, being willing to be vulnerable with your students, but then inviting them to explore. So what I was able to experiment with is design the class around exploration and where the focus was not on the outcome, because I don't even know what a good outcome is if this is the first time a class like this is being taught. So the focus was on the willingness to explore and focusing on critical thinking and having deeper conversations that go past the was this cool or not, but thinking of the implications. Again, the feelings that get triggered by the use of the technology. And to me, that was really transformational because I felt the engagement with the students was so amazing that it's really making me kind of question, uh, you know, how do I bring this into all my classes? Right. The fact that I was able to focus on this intersection between AI and music was very unique and fascinating. But I think integrating AI into everything we do in the classroom, exploring with the students and with them defining what is the best way to use it is going to be very important in the next couple years at least.
Really appreciate that, Jorge. I hone in on where you talked about the feelings that are triggered by engaging with AI. And I think this is a really undersold story. So really appreciate, Tara, that your work at Our Media is talking a lot about this. So I'm going to get to that in a moment. I think the first thing is that we're seeing, from my perspective, the ceiling has been lifted for a lot of what can be created in collaboration between students and AI. So great examples of this in a lot of places. And what I mean by that is students can actually build something that can have impact at scale in a way that was not possible prior. There's a lot of examples of this. One is, our work with VoteWise Colorado. The next is, things like feedback, the ability for teachers to get students actionable and effective feedback quickly for skills like analytical writing. The ceiling has been taken off. Things that would have been an unfathomable amount of time now can actually be quite doable with an upfront investment. However, we've also lost a floor. And what I mean by that is, like, there is the ability for students to quickly say, this is too hard. I want to avoid the thinking. I'm going to outsource. And so it's this really big challenge of removing the floor and the ceiling that I do think there is a huge potential of increasing achievement gaps. And so when we start to think about that, it turns out that we're seeing in a lot of the research now that there's some really important sequencing. And when we sequence the learning well, there are much bigger opportunities. I think a lot of people saw the MIT study, a lot of headlines claimed it as like ChatGPT rots your brain, even though the study said, like, don't say that. But the finding that I am so excited about, that confirms a lot of what we've seen, is actually engaging ourselves first, our own thinking first, our own creativity first, right? Not going to the AI for brainstorming. And then leveraging AI deeper in the process, there's increased engagement in the brain. And that's a lot of teachers, of course, are like, yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for confirming that. We already knew that. But knowing that really matters. And then I think the third thing that is really important that we talked about at the beginning is kids and people all over building relationships with AI. And so it's this really big challenge of, if we're gonna try and seek that ceiling that has been taken off, we have to approach it with deep responsibility of helping young people and educators and everyone choose the relationship they want with AI early in that process before habits build and before we've had an opportunity to think intentionally about what we want.
Oh,
Yeah, I
wow.
like the direction Zach is going in there. I think I would just add, like, so I've been teaching this now the second summer of teaching this class between Howard students, and they spend their daytime doing an internship at Reddit. So these are CS students. I think the key thing is it's forcing against a lot of whether it's college all the way up to kind of workforce development training to rethink the way I think training in general is done in the sense that it's more this co-developed framework. Like if you think about the calculator, it's more of a, okay, I put an input in, I get an answer. Whereas in this case, it's like, well, finally, this is interactive. You think about learning in the past, it was you would go and read something and then you were told to go, make some observation, but you really never were interacting with that work of art or that artifact. It was kind of, it was told to you, it was dictation. And I think, we've really, a lot of education in the past has been, I think, really reading and writing kind of input output heavy, and we're now really falling into that category of comprehension. Like getting people to actually think is something that really we don't actually have the best metrics and ways to assess that in the testing framework of the world. Like there's been all these discussions around like merit and grit and different things, but like a quantitative measure of this stuff is not the most easiest thing to obtain, just given the diversity in thought and experiences that people have. And I think it's thinking about how do you think about that in the actual teaching paradigm. So, like, for example, I had students building rapidly like applications using AI, but the first thing I told them was like, well, in the real world, let's say you're a product manager or software engineer, you're going to be asked to kind of think through your plan. And getting them to do that really like lays the foundation for them to be more successful because we were asking like Reddit for like, well, what makes a good returning student, meaning after they graduate college? And a lot of the performance metrics were around like, well, walk me through your plan. Like, why are you doing something? It was less of a concern of, yes, it is important that they can code and, do all the computational stuff someone expects in a job, but when we think about how we interview and hire people, it's, oh, they're self-starter. They can look around corners. These are all the things that like we're not really asking an AI to do, nor did, they're not information retrieval tasks. They're not, can you tell me pi out to 1,000 digits? Like they're not those types of tasks. And I think that AI is really forcing us to revisit what we all know is kind of like a disconnect between our training environments and what is expected of people in the workforce.
Oh, amazing. This is why this topic can't be spoken for in 1 hour, right? This is a topic of cocktails, dinner, lunch, desserts, because it's just versed. And to add on to the stuff that has been said here, and I'm just really beaming because from an education perspective, the ability of staying curious, right? And critical thinking. Um, I find out that people that have come from, and this is not me being biased, just me sharing my experience, right? People that have come from, for example, the liberal arts colleges, where they focus on broad education in humanities, sciences, and social sciences, those are people that seem to really, you know, hone into how to prompt and how to really think and guide what it is that they want to get away from or get out of the interactive AI tools that are out there. When it comes to students and the whole idea of emerging technologies and student-led innovations, so we want to make sure that we're producing people that can really go into the world and become global impact players, people who can address global challenges. And I think that's most of grad school. And the journey starts from beginning. Dr. Solomon talked about how we do our testing in the US. The competency-based uh, education is kind of trying to take over the way we've been doing testing. We've been teaching kids how to pass the test, but when those kids come to college or when they proceed with any tertiary education, you find out that those people that have been taught how to critically think, uh, going back to things like the theory of knowledge and how is knowledge defined and how is it created and how is it added upon. Those people with those skills end up being really good in this space. Now, it's not too late. You'll just be playing catch up. I'm reminded of when I was in grad school and when people were introducing themselves and introducing the schools they went to, right? In the beginning of that session, you ask yourself, am I in the right place? Is this a wise investment? I took out loans to go to grad school, and maybe this is not the right thing for me because you're really worried. The first exams come, people that went to, like I said again, people that went to the liberal arts schools are great at writing papers. They're great at arguing, and counter arguing points. For those of you who went to liberal arts schools, I take my hat off to you. For a guy who's been in the tech space, I found that I found that bizarre to me, right? Because I like facts are facts. Are your facts factual? And are your factual facts, right? That's how my head has been trained. And I'm in this space where I've got to really start thinking and logically start putting ideas across, even if the idea is not good. But if it's logically put across, it becomes sound, and at least people can build upon it. And I'm coming back down to the student-led innovations. I think we're learning a lot from our students that are coming into our classrooms. I'm sure even at the younger age, K through 12, there's some great kids coming across. The question for all of us is, are we flexible enough? Do we have the bandwidth to even open our minds and say, hey, let's learn through this journey together? And Jorge mentioned that, you know, it's a collaborative, right? Or rather, I like calling it a collective. There's some things I've been taught or that I'm learning, and it's just amazing how it's being shared across the classrooms and the platforms. So, Tara, I want to give it back to you because I know you've got many questions, but I just wanted to add on to that component before I pass it back on to you.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant. I appreciate all of your guys' thoughts. I also just want to pause quickly and mention I should have said this before, but I really, really encourage folks in the audience to share questions in the chat if they come to mind. One of the biggest reasons we wanted to continue the conversation from the in-person panel is that a lot of the audience members had things to share and questions, and so I'd really just encourage you all to do that. Um, just to kind of reflect on what you all shared, Zach, I really, really appreciated the ceiling and floor. I honestly, I love metaphors. So I think that was a brilliant way of putting it. We're in this kind of void now where there aren't necessarily rules around how to engage with these technologies. And to the points that you all had made, the traditional learning environment is really more of an input output, like a closed box kind of system versus AI is really challenging what it means to learn. What are the skills that are going to make someone successful? Dr. Solomon, you were reflecting on the fact that it's really about the process when it comes to what makes someone an effective thinker, problem solver, or worker. Um, and Jorge, you had brought up the words experimentation and exploration. And it absolutely sounds like those are the kinds of experiences folks can have in the learning environment that will set themselves up to, to Dave's point, to be able to get jobs and leave the learning environment and be successful. I'm wondering if you guys could share, either in the learning environment or outside of it, what has that kind of experimentation or exploration looked like when it comes to either student-led innovation or engaging the students in new ways, or a big word that we use at our media is, co-design. We're co-designing with the young people that we're engaging with. Can you guys share what that might look like, or if you guys have come across it?
I'll start that off again, and I'll share a collaboration with Jorge and someone who's joined the session here. Gary Selleck introduced us around songwriting, and Jorge and I were trying to figure out how to co-write a song for my daughter's wedding. And I had never written lyrics before. I used AI to help build my confidence in writing lyrics and developing melodies, which gave us a jump start to focus on the song itself. And we got a song from start with live musicians replacing the digital in several weeks. And so I learned in new ways that I could write lyrics. I built my confidence around it. And I did that through collaboration with Jorge. So that's an example in a personal, artistic way, but the same thing applies in small teams and groups in business. And we were talking about relationship with AI. I think we're going to find relationship between people and AI is going to start to emerge to be a really important aspect of someone's skills who wants to get a job, who can stand out from the rest of everyone else.
Well, Dave, thank you for that. I'm in the car, so you'll have to just look at the picture of me, but otherwise there might be a black and white around here. Well, let me build on something. A couple of us have used the words or the phrase leave the learning environment. And my background includes senior roles in training development in corporations and then 30 years of consulting. My passion, obviously, is the guitar and music, and I'm delighted to work with Dave and Jorge. But Don Kirkpatrick is well known in the business of measuring learning. And he has 4 stages. The first stage is, were the donuts good and was it a nice place? Okay, that lasts about, I'll give it 45 seconds. The second one is, can they perform the learning, which would be supported by AI tools in the classroom, whether that's virtual or physical space? But then it really changes because we're not leaving the learning environment, we're creating a new one. And that question is, can I use the tools and skills and knowledge in my normal daily activities? And this is where AI becomes extraordinarily helpful because I'm not abandoning the teacher or the book or the PowerPoint slides. I'm actually engaging with the tools that you showed me how to use. And of course, the fourth measure, which is always hard because you can't be exactly clear that it was this and not that without a control group, is did it have an impact on the organization? So I would like us to challenge the idea that we're leaving the learning environment. And what we're actually doing is enabling the learning environment, which is every day, because people don't return to the classroom every day. What they do is get new challenges, and what the AI tools, knowledge, and people like you who guide us in our daily activities, not on occasion. So that's my proposal to all of us, is to rethink how we think about this.
Thank you so much, Gary. And following up on that, I really love that perspective. And I think what's happening is we're completely redefining what learning is. Uh, Again, learning was based on acquiring knowledge, right? I'm going way back, but for hundreds or thousands of years, that was learning and education. Is here's information, learn that information, memorize that information. Uh, Information is out there for anybody to access. So it's not about the information anymore, right? It's about how we use that information, how we engage, and how we um, take action with it. And I think in what's happening right now with AI, I think one of the areas where I would say it's both a concern but an area of opportunity is, there's sort of a magical quality to AI. From where I come from in the music industry, there are platforms now that with just a quick sentence, they can give you a fully produced, finalized song, which is pretty impressive technologically. But then, are you really a music creator when you go about it that way? And I think if we get caught kind of in this magic aspect and we use this technology as a way to not collaborate with other people because I don't need them anymore, because these tools can do what other people can do, then we go into a very dangerous territory. And I think our responsibility in education, I think one of the big parts of it is going to be how to guide our students to use this technology as a way to collaborate, not as a way to isolate themselves. In the class I taught, part of, and it was very much on purpose, none of the projects were individual. All of the projects were in groups because I wanted them to explore the technology together and using their skills that had nothing to do with AI, but empowered by AI, how could they kind of supercharge their creative process? But that, in my experience, if it's only you and you isolate yourself with the technology, I think it creates the illusion that you are moving forward, but sometimes not really. When you collaborate, it really becomes true. Because once you engage with multiple human beings around the technology, the focus is not the technology anymore. The technology can become an enabler, but the focus is on the individuals and their creativity and their thinking process and what they bring to the table. And I think that might be one of the ways where we can move forward responsibly as we integrate the technology, definitely in education, but I can totally see this happening in the workplace as well.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think, and I'm not so well versed in the music industry, but I'm going to give kind of a parallel example of like where I think that it's important that the learner learn basic foundational things because that is how they can use the technology better. So I'll give an example. Like most people are probably familiar with the Socratic method, right? But when you prompt an AI, a lot of people just like, oh, I just have this question or something. Well, imagine a world where it's like you don't personally learn the Socratic method. So now when you go to ask the system a question, you're not aware of that. And so therefore you're not getting the output you want. And I think that's really where the learning has to start happening is that yeah, I can use the AI to make music, but that's like saying I use an instrument to make music. The instrument doesn't make the musician. Like, I mean, like it's you understand the thing you're doing in a way that others don't, and that's why we're mesmerized by like anybody who does well at anything. And so I think it's figuring out how to do that type of teaching as opposed to, well, the tool is just going to do everything for us. Like no, the tool's going to do what you're capable of. And I think that's the challenge. It's getting people to rise to a level that's higher than where they're currently at. And then saying, oh, wow, the tool allowed me to do that. So it allowed me to examine, I don't know, a bunch of political views simultaneously. Well, a political activist in the past could never do that. Or if they did, it would be they have to go do a bunch of surveys, turnaround time is low, is long, they can't get a decision immediately, but now they have a system that they can say, hey, on this issue, what might be a conservative, liberal, middle viewpoint? Like, give me all these perspectives and then go forward and do something interesting with that.
I really like this line of conversation because I fully agree that like experimentation and with leveraging technology in unique ways and collaboration are essential. And one of my favorite papers that I'm talking about with every educator I can right now is it's the memory paradox, why our brains need knowledge in the age of AI. And it really makes a very compelling case for that it's not that we no longer need knowledge, it's that we need the knowledge so that we can have the intelligence to be able to apply it in unique ways, right? Know the rules to break the rules. And so when we think about this almost paradoxical idea, I really feel like in many ways education and work, while the ceiling has been taken off, gets harder, because so much of what AI does is it produces median outputs. And so like if I'm just relying on the AI, that's exactly what everyone else is going to get. We're all going to get this, it may be better than what I would have done alone, but it's this median output. And so it's the expertise that I bring, it's the unique taste, it's the unique perspective on the world that then I can leverage in collaboration with a bunch of other really wonderful, brilliant people who have unique things to bring to the world. And then when we combine that with AI, then we can build really brilliant things. I think some of Ethan Mollick's work demonstrated this is like groups of people collaborating with AI were the ones who were most likely to have a top 10% outcome versus, one person with AI, they could do something really good, but still they're not outperforming a group of people collaborating with AI. And so I think this idea of, yes, we've got to experiment, we've got to collaborate, but also remember that it is our unique expertise, our unique vision that can help bring it out of that median and make it something that's really, really powerful.
Oh, Zach, let me just jump in there and I'm building upon everything that's been said in ways that continue the conversation. One of the important things there is we talk about learning, people learn differently. And what AI has provided is it's shaping personalized learning um, in a way that has really been accelerated, right? It's increasing student autonomy, ownership of my interests, my goals. What am I trying to understand? What am I trying to, become good at? It also enhances engagement, right? The motivation of areas of interest, right? You have this so-called um, tutor, coach, or I don't want to say mentor, but you have these tools that allow you to bounce ideas off. Of course, those ideas have to be, uh, you know, checked because you're curious and you're also applying what I call the radar, right? You're making sure that, hey, is this thing that I'm reading accurate? And then the integration of emerging technologies, right? That's a different personalized way of how to do things and how to learn things. Think about ideas that are happening right now. Um, you know, recently at Carnegie Mellon, we just hosted the Pennsylvania Energy and AI Summit. And thinking about that, it just hit me, and I realized that AI has been around for a very long time. It actually started in the 60s, right? Where people were trying to figure out, okay, how do we build upon some of these ideas, right? So the foundational roots was around 1967, when Carnegie Mellon um, became established from Carnegie Tech and Mellon Institute, and they merged. Now that merger was a fertile environment for pioneering research in computing and artificial intelligence, right? This was 1967, yeah, artificial intelligence. And then we've got some early visionaries. These are people that I had to really, really understand what they did and how they were thinking, and their minds were really out of this world, especially at that time in 1967. Alan Newell, Hub Simon, Alan Perlis, and Raj Reddy. I believe this was some of the pioneers that started shaping the field of AI. And then you think about the milestones that have been created. In 65, there was a creation of the Department of Computer Science. It was the first time of a department called Computer Science was created. In 79, we launched the Robotics Institute of, of America in US universities. In 84, the Software Engineering Institute that runs our research and does a lot of government research was was stood up. 88, School of Computer Science, the first college dedicated solely to the discipline of computer science. So I go back to all these things and I'm realizing they have been there. And one of the things that was mentioned earlier on was now that they're accessible. In the past, these things are not accessible to everyone. Are they accessible to everybody now? Not yet. There's some parts in rural America that don't have access to this. There's some parts of the world that don't have access to this. But it's people like us in this room or in this panel or in this group that tries to make this thing accessible to others. There's a question real quick in the chat by Omar. Any ideas? I'd love to hear how AI tools could be used to enhance technical training programs, like the AutoCAD classes that you run, to improve student engagement and outcomes. Omar, right off the back, I know you're hearing a lot of stuff going on here, but number one is curiosity. Are those students curious about the industry they're in? And that curiosity is going to lead them to start learning about AutoCAD and ways on how they can pace themselves and what questions to ask. So it's just the engagement, the curiosity led by engagement, and then the collaborative nature. The amount of learning that takes place in groups, and I think somebody mentioned about projects. One of the challenges of grad school was not individual work. Individual work, you can knock it out. It was project work. when now I have to think about how do I get Zach? Zach has been offline the whole day, but Zach pops in at 9:30 and ready to go. Well, I'm tired. I don't know what Zach has been doing, but Zach is ready to go at 9:30. And Dave says, hold on, guys, I can't start at 9:30. I have to walk my dog out at 9:30 to do its business before it goes to bed. So we should start at 10 o'clock. The whole idea, what I'm trying to come at is project work is challenging because you're bringing people together, but it's made much better with tools that we have like in AI, right? It's forcing people to think not individualistically, but to think collaboratively as, hey, we have an opportunity here. Every challenge, again, I'm a consultant. Every challenge a client brings to me, I look at it as an opportunity to build with them, to make them own that challenge, own that opportunity, and to make that opportunity much rewarding. So, Omar, I just gave you a snippet of how AI tools could be used. I believe part of that use is also going to be driven by your students and the curiosity. Challenge them to come with, hey, go out there and find out things that can really drive or enhance our learning in this AutoCAD space using AI. Make them part of it, and Omar, before you know it, they're teaching you and you're sipping your coffee and you're learning and like, oh, this is good information. This is nice, right? And then you document it and you build from there. But I want to pass that back to you, Tara.
And I'll add one more thing to that that's close to Autodesk is on the Autodesk website. There's a great case study of the design of the Toronto facility that was a collaboration with AI using a number of Autodesk tools that are to what Kenya was talking about is all about collaboration and project. And so I think there's some things very close to AutoCAD within the Autodesk universe that you might point to that give some learnings there.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate those thoughts. I also just want to note, I see a comment in the chat from Shauna who's sharing just the point, it, just emphasizing the importance of creating space for students to interrogate these tools. And I just want to again, echo, I think experimentation, exploration, and just this curiosity that then leads to a really critical lens around AI technologies is absolutely what we're advocating here. One thing that's coming to mind, based on everything that's been shared, but especially Dr. Kenya, your last comments is that AI should really be used to augment rather to then replace human value, in any setting, but especially then when you're thinking about like a business setting. And I'm curious, could you guys share, have you seen examples of this in practice? What does it look like to use AI applications of AI to augment those processes and really encourage a human first and kind of human centric approach to making work more efficient, collaborative, productive, etc.?
I mean, I guess I can just cycle back on I think the most useful case is obviously in coding. I think that is changing into more of a design product, let's try and service customers first type of problem space, which is, I think that's just what everybody's been. To me, it's like it's making the process more human, honestly. I think that it's not that it wasn't human before, but it was a lot of effort to be like, oh, what does someone want? And then scope that out. And now it's like, oh, well, you can sit there, have a conversation with someone, prototype something, get feedback, and kind of iterate a lot faster. So I think that's a very like actionable space where we're already seeing a lot of that transformation. I know a lot of people are always like, oh, well, what will happen to software engineers? But I kind of liken it to like, I guess being an entrepreneur where there are entrepreneurs who are like, well, I don't like talking to people. And it's like, well, then you're not going to be able to sell your product. Like, like that's what it means to be an entrepreneur is you have to go out there and talk to people. And so I think it will be more so you'll see people who are non-technical will have to become a little more technical, and people who might not have had, let's say, the social skills have to start getting them because you now have tools that can kind of, benefit you in ways that you might have struggled in the past. And so I think that's really where I see there being opportunity for AI to help people is, hey, you're not good at talking to people, use AI to simulate some conversations. Like get in the reps. I almost think about it like it's like a gym. Like go and get the practice in private for the thing that you're actually weak in. Whereas in the past, it was like, well, you just kind of were like, well, I can't overcome my fear of X, or I don't know how to do something. So that's really where I'm seeing it. I think a lot more useful in terms of humans trying to figure out how do they collaborate with these things. And that's what I try and encourage the students to do. I think we've always heard the case of, oh, there's no stupid question. I think it's not saying that anymore. It's like, hey, did you try asking AI about it? Like, take that kind of fear and getting the learner to be like, there's a place you can ask, learn, and then let's revisit this together as humans. Like, what did you hear? What did you see? So that's just some of the stuff that I try and recommend to the students and how I see it being more collaborative going forward.
Wow,
Uh,
I'm just gonna build upon that real quick. So there's a big push right now. People are using AI individually, and most leaders in organizations are trying to find a way of, how to enterprise AI as a way of doing work. And it's very difficult to do that initially because people have different ways of learning and pushing things forward. But what I can share real quick on what it's being used right now, and unfortunately, this has caused a lot of organizations to really cut back their stuff. And I'm going to be honest about that. People have lost jobs in organizations that we never thought would have lost jobs, and big organizations like Microsoft, Tata Consulting, Google, and just think about the tech industries out there. And the reason why those jobs are being lost is because partially because they've really designed um, bots or tools that are actually doing some of the work that was being done initially by uh, by junior analysts or maybe junior engineers. Uh, for example, the data analysis and business intelligence. If you think about any data tool that you use out there, Power BI is by Microsoft, and Tableau. Um, you know, their core functional areas. For example, for Tableau, it's a natural language data querying tool. But how it's being used here at the university, for example, is asking questions or to the dashboard in plain English of what you want to see as a leader, right? Then the data gets extracted for you and sent to you. So what was being done by an individual, hey, get me this report, get me this, get me that. These things have been automated, and the person can just click and it's run out and it's produced. Another big component that is being used right now is AI in project and task management. You know, project managers, were usually task oriented, checking in the, the the old work breakdown structures to find out who hasn't done what. What's the predecessor, what's the successor. Now this is all being automated, but do we still need people? Yes, we do. I believe we do. But the amount of people being cut from their organizations is alarming. And I think also, how do we get leaders in these organizations to realize that now that we've automated this, what can we use some of these other people for? You know, as opposed to thanks but no thanks. Of course, they're not coming out to say you lost your job because of AI, but if you look at the data, if you look at the trends, you can see that there's a bit of some uh, there's a bit of some there's a bit of some challenges there with people losing jobs because things have been automated, and all of a sudden people think, well, that can be handled by one person overseeing all those things. We don't need everybody else doing these other things. So that's just my input. I didn't want to hog too much time, and I'm going to pass it on to whoever wants to speak. I think Dave, you or Jorge, your mics are on.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that. I think that there's a lot of emphasis around automation. There are a lot of jobs still to automate all that. But to what you had said earlier about humanities and the fact we're storytellers, the fact that we haven't really improved our ability of interpreting context and storytelling. So applications in the work environment, a lot of people are now being able to synthesize their voice better where it was a challenge. They're able to build groups, do design work, decide what in the design work they're going to pay attention to, improve the probability of imagining a better future and starting to test it and apply it. So I think my belief is we have way too much weight in the high computation algorithmic side of this, and that's why we're doing our humanizing AI think tank. Is we need to pay concentrated attention and energy towards what we want to become with these tools supporting us. So I'll
I think
turn.
that's really, really interesting, Dave, because um, I really appreciate the focus there on like what do we want to create, you know, for people. And I really find a lot of evidence in the recent Claude release of their economic index and the impact and automation versus augmentation, and really high automation rates, right, in math and computer science, upwards of 50%, whereas in general closer to 57%. But when we look at social services, that's more of like a 75% augmentation rate. And I think that's really important because when we come back to like, what does it mean to be an educator? What does it mean to be, a social worker, a guidance counselor? These things where people have incredible skill sets, but they have never really been possible to scale and stay in the work, right? The people who want to scale essentially kind of have to leave the work to scale it. And one thing that gives me deep hope about the workplace is so many of these people that are kind of in nooks and crannies of the economy, of the social work system, of the education system, of so many places are going to be able to scale work that is going to really benefit people because they can be augmented and things that are highly unlikely to be automated. And so I have some really deep hope around, can we deliver services to the people who need them across America and the world more effectively by leveraging people who understand these problems the best in the world?
I would love to jump in on that point if it's okay. So my name is Mary Hurley. I just recently completed my doctorate, and I focused on engaging teachers together globally without the structure of the school, without administrators to grow agency and to deploy them back to their schools to actually shift their systems. And so I actually had my students working with AI for the last couple of years. And I think the reason I wanted to talk right after Zach, but also some other people mentioned this point, that the point of traditional education has been input output. I want to very, very strongly disagree with that. For example, a project that I just completed with my students was a full cycle of mixed method research. They had to come up with their topic, they had to come up with their research questions, their answers, their interviews, et cetera, et cetera. This was, by the way, public 8th grade classroom. And so I fully opened AI to them, even though it was against the school rules. And so there was no fear around using it. And they could use it all the time, but they had to discuss with me. And so that empowered that metacognition, that understanding of why they're doing those things, and also took all of the ha ha ha, I'm going to cheat idea off of it. And so they would talk themselves into or out of actually using it. And again, I'm just underscoring that this was 8th grade while I was embedded as a researcher this last spring. And I think one of the core pieces that I hear in so many of these tech and business sessions is people sort of shorthand what teaching is in K-12, and at least in my experience of about 25 years, in various countries, it's really, really not that. Maybe in math classes, but certainly not in the humanities courses. Thanks a lot for listening. That was long.
Yeah, no, I
And,
really appreciate you sharing this
and
thought.
actually, I would love to jump in. I was kind of hoping on following on that subject. You know, there's a word that I think keeps coming up in conversations around AI, which is replacement. And I think that is a huge mistake. If I think on education first, I don't ever want AI to replace any of the skills of my students. That would be just the worst thing I could do. It's all about enhancing it, right? So instead of replacing, it's on top of, right? So if I bring AI in the context of music creation, I would, if I tell my students, don't worry about studying harmony or arrangements or songwriting, because AI can do it for you. Well, please fire me now. Because what I'm doing and what I think we should do is tell them everything you're learning, yes, and keep doing it. Because when you become really good without AI, and then you learn how to bring AI properly into your workflow, now that's a superpower. So it's instead of putting less effort to achieve the same, it's like, no, put the work. But now I have the tools that are going to make you 10 times better, right? That's where I think it gets exciting. And also on an ethical side of things, right? When we think of the workforce, again, when I hear, people being replaced by AI, like that is so short-sighted. How about you train those people you already have to use AI to be way more efficient? So instead of thinking, how do I reduce cost in my business? How about you think I just put a little bit more of investment and the outcome can be so much better because now the people I already have are way more powerful and they can bring incredible ideas they probably couldn't do before, right? So every time I hear replacement in a conversation around AI, I'm like, no, wait, no, let's find another way to do this, because the possibilities to do good and to help humanity advance are enormous, but the risks are equally huge if we go about this the wrong way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all of those thoughts. I see we're coming to the top of the hour, and I know, yeah, I was gonna say, I know Dr. Solomon has to run, and I'd like to wrap things up pretty soon, but I really, really appreciate everyone's time today. Are there any last questions that folks have that they'd like to share in the chat? We might be able to get to one more as we're wrapping up right now. When is next session? Excellent question. The next session will be forthcoming. If you go ahead and follow Our Media's LinkedIn, you'll be able to stay up to date about events that are coming up in the future. But yeah, I think just to wrap up, I really appreciate our audience's time and participation. And again, Dr. Solomon and Kenya, Jorge, Dave, Zach, thank you so much for joining us. I think we all learned a lot today.
Thanks. Be well.
Thanks, y'all. Have a
Thank you,
great day.
everyone.